Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Team Indusion, I would like to thank and welcome all the attendees and esteemed panelists for being part of our webinar series, Exponential Leadership. I'm your host, Vijay Vaishnav, co-founder of Indusion Consulting, a diversified premier search firm specializing in middle and senior management talent across industries that includes BFSI, ITES, and global service delivery, diversified corporates, digital and technology. My co-host for today is my colleague Kevin Patrao, having 15 to 20 years of insurance hands-on experience prior to joining us as an AD and head for the insurance practice. Today, we cover in depth the insurance industry landscape within the context of COVID-19 pandemic and its resultant uncertainties. The insurance industry is generally well prepared for major loss events, including pandemics, but the financial impacts will take time to play out, and will be reinsurer specific. Insurers are responding to the widening COVID-19 outbreak in multiple fronts as claim payers, employers, and investment managers. Each has its own distinct challenges, not just for the insurance industry, but for the global economy and society as a whole. The insurance industry of India consists of 57 insurance companies, of which 24 are in life insurance business and 33 are in non-life. The market share of private sector companies in the non-life insurance market rose from 13.12% in FY03 to 55.7% in FY20. These figures are of course up till April 2019. A brief look at the insurance industry shows an expanding insurance landscape with consistent growth year on year. Insurance industry in India is expected to reach US $280 billion by end of 2020, driven by increasing awareness, innovative products, and more distribution channels. Apart from manufacturing, many businesses have been indirectly affected by the virus. The lockdown in major cities in India has resulted into public establishments being shut down completely and the revenues being impacted. These establishments require urgent relief from the government, and the current situation may lead to lower renewals of employee benefit and life and accident policies. Today, as a part of our panel, we have invited leaders who have seen the sector grow from a public sector dominated to an evolved private sector dominant industry, offering value-added products, sales and services driven by technology and innovation. Our panelists are gurus from various facets of this ever-changing industry. The question to ponder amidst the crisis, are we future ready in the middle of the unprecedented crisis? I shall now hand over the baton to my colleague Kevin Patrao, who will introduce us to the esteemed panelists. Kevin, over to you.
Thanks for your opening comments, Vijay. Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. I'd like to introduce our esteemed panelists for today's session. Our first panelist today is Mr. Sandeep Ghosh. Sandeep currently leads EY Financial Services Consulting Practice in India. With 30 plus years of industry experience in India, APAC and Europe, he has successfully led hyper-growth strategies, business transformation, partnerships, alliances and joint ventures, and restructuring programs across financial services, FMCG and industrial sectors. Prior to EY, Sandeep was CEO and MD of Aksa's joint venture company in India, where he was instrumental in improving its operational performance, transforming the JV's life insurance business, and driving synergies across operating entities. In his previous roles, Sandeep has worked at global banks like Citi, RBS, and ANZ, where he led commercial bankings in India and Asia. His mandates included organic growth, portfolio acquisition, and integration, as well as franchise expansion in geographies. Sandeep has an MBA in marketing and strategy from IIM Ahmedabad and a bachelor's degree in commerce from Sydenham College, Mumbai. Welcome to the panel, Sandeep. Our next panelist is Mr. Anup Rao. Anup is the MD and CEO of Future Generali India Insurance Company Limited, a JV between Future Group, the game changer in retail trade in India, and Generali, an 189 years old global insurance group featuring among the world's 50 largest companies. Anup took over as MD and CEO of Future Generali India in 2019. Under his leadership, the company has delivered higher than industry growth, improved profitability, and shown an enhanced focus on customer centricity. An industry veteran, Anup has a rich career spanning over 23 years, of which the last 18 years has been with India's leading insurance companies. He has been in a unique position to lead companies in both life and non-life insurance sectors. Before his stint at Future Generali, he was a CEO at Edelweiss General Insurance, prior to which he was a CEO at Reliance Nippon Life Insurance. He has also held key leadership positions at HDFC Life and ICICI Prudential Life Insurance. He's an industry thought leader and recipient of multiple accolades, including being named as the hottest young executive 2014 by Business Today. Anup has done his MBA in marketing from Mumbai University and holds an honors degree in economics from Delhi University. We welcome you to the panel, Anup. Our next panelist is Judadit Das, also known as Jeet in circles. Is a Chief Human Resource Officer at ICICI Prudential Life Insurance. Began his career in 1995 with RPG after graduating from XLRI and has now been with ICICI Prudential for 20 years. He is currently responsible for HR, operations and customer service, admin and infrastructure, IT infrastructure, and CSR. Jeet also chairs HR and training committee of CII for the Western region. We welcome you to the panel, Jeet. Our next panelist is Mr. Mayank Batwal, who is the CEO of Aditya Birla Health Insurance, a joint venture between Aditya Birla Group and MMI Holdings of South Africa. He also serves as director for Aditya Birla Wellness Private Limited. Mayank has been responsible for setting up Aditya Birla Health Insurance, and with his expertise and experience, Aditya Birla Health Insurance has become one of the fastest growing health insurance companies in India in just a short span of 4 years. Mayank has completed more than 26 years with Aditya Birla Group, and during his stint, he has worked with diverse business units and projects including fertilizer and copper smelting units, financial service business, and power projects. Mr. Batwal is also the chair of FICCI Health Insurance Committee and a fellow member of ICAI, ICWA, and ICSI. We welcome you to the panel, Mayank. Our next panelist and moderator for today is Mr. Rajinder Sood, who is the founder of Max Skill First, an innovative expansion in the field of professional development set up under the aegis of Max Group, a leading Indian business conglomerate with interests ranging from insurance to healthcare and senior living to manufacturing. He is responsible for creating the right framework for growth of the organization, both in terms of its client base and revenue, as well as the capability to build deeper and more meaningful value for the existing base. With over 2 decades of extensive experience in sales, with few of the leading organizations like Max Life Insurance, Eureka Forbes, and some more, Rajinder is a veteran in planning and implementation of sales processes, governance framework, and overall organization design. He has played a pivotal role as a founding member as a part of senior leadership team of Max Life and led agency as director and head agency distribution till 2012. Throughout his career, Rajinder has been a zealous catalyst in impacting organizations for creating humongous growth and learning opportunities for varied group of sales professionals. Rajinder is also an executive coach from Columbia University, New York, USA. He holds a bachelor degree in economics from Delhi University and has completed an executive business leaders program from IIM Kolkata. He has also been awarded the prestigious Chairman Award for Excellence at Max Group. Besides his professional strengths, Rajinder is a passionate marathon runner. He's an ardent spiritual practitioner, a food enthusiast, and a real movie buff. We welcome you to the panel, Rajinder.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you.
We look forward to an engaging discussion with you and with the other panelists. Before we start, I just want to share a few quick guidelines. Those who have logged in from the mobile device, you can swipe left or right to see the entire panel. We have a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. You can start sharing your questions. I request that you please direct your questions to the concerned panelists from whom you wish to get a response, and we will try to answer them towards the latter part of the webinar. Now over to you, Rajinder, to commence the discussion.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Vijay, thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity. And Anup, Jeet, Mayank, and Sandeep, thank you very much for being on the panel. It's a pleasure. I feel very happy to be a moderator today. I've never done this. For the first time I'm doing on a digital platform. So I have a mixed feeling, both of excitement and a little bit of a, I'll not say stress, but a little bit of a need to perform and make sure that I get the best out of all of you. All right. That's the expectation of the audience. And one other thing that reminds me in my opening comments, most of the time when external situations are bad, I've seen leaders, whether the frontline leaders or CEOs, they also create internal situations to be very bad, which means they create anxiety, they create fear, they create so much around it. So when the external situation is bad, what is needed is the internal situation should be fully in control. And therefore, which means I'm calm, composed, anchored, and I really know how to navigate and help my team to reach the destination that I have for myself and the team that I have to lead altogether, right? So, and one of the reasons is because we start creating imagination. Even in the current context of COVID, none of the people that know what's going to come up in the next 3 months' time, right? 6 months down the line, but we are imagination. And because of imagination, the fear and anxiety comes in altogether, right? So I think what is needed is the best of our intelligence, best of our wisdom, and best of experience has to come together. And that is what this panel is all about today. If you see, we have a very diverse panel today. We have Mayank from healthcare, we have health insurance, we have Jeet from the people side, we have Sandeep who's done both sides, consulting and on the executive role that side, and then we have, of course, Anup who's going to talk about the general insurance that we talk about it. And I will not bore all of you by talking about what COVID has done altogether for all of us. But if you see, COVID has done, the face-to-face sale doesn't exist anymore. Everything has moved digital. The whole customer acquisition to fulfillment has moved digital. People are not operating from offices anymore, but people are operating from homes, and homes have become offices. In one of the meetings I heard, I'm operating from home office. I said, what is home office? Say, home has become an office for us, right? So I think that's an interesting story going on right now. So whichever way you like to call it, and this is causing its own challenges around it. And that's where I think we'll have some insights coming from Jeet altogether. And if you see the context in which we're operating today, life insurance experienced a double-digit growth in the last 2 years' time, right? And except for health insurance, which is currently experiencing a 25% to 50% growth, depending on company to company, most of the insurance industries are struggling to meet their business plan, and there's a anticipation degrowth that's coming up altogether. On the other side, the global economies are shrinking. India will degrow between -5% onwards, don't know which side. And therefore, the challenges about capital investments, portfolio investment by life insurance companies. So everything requires tremendous amount of shift. The way we recruit people, the way we train them, the way we engage with them requires a lot of paradigm shift altogether. And therefore, I think there's a tremendous amount of impact, Sandeep, Jeet, Mayank, and Anup, that all of you will agree. So I think the first thing, if you allow me to open up and say, first 2 minutes, your opening comments, Sandeep, to start with you. Impact of COVID on the industry, positive, negative. What's your take on that? You got to unmute yourself, Sandeep. Just unmute yourself, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Rajinder, and a very good evening to my fellow panelists as well. Look, let's understand a couple of very quick facts from my perspective. One is that a health pandemic, is probably a moment of truth for the insurance sector. The importance of insurance and the importance of having adequate insurance. If people don't figure this out in the midst of a pandemic, when are they going to figure it out? So from a overarching perspective, as a sector, insurance as a sector, the level of awareness amongst people of the importance of insurance is probably at its highest in the Indian market, in the global market as well. Having said that, the sales process in India was, and more so in life and health, maybe a little less so in GI, especially in retail GI, was essentially a face-to-face sales process. And in the absence of your ability to go and sit in front of a customer, convince them, with the constraints of trying to recruit agents in this backdrop, there are obviously huge challenges to the way business is actually done. Even if a customer wants to buy a policy, if you need to do a medical underwriting, how do you motivate a customer to go into a laboratory and get himself tested, a path lab, and very, very difficult in these circumstances. With the falling business, you have the challenges of cost. It is a business with distributed sales force, offices. How do you motivate and engage a large distributed sales force in a situation where people are worried about health and well-being, people are afraid to go out and things like that. How do you do that in this environment? So there are some significant challenges that leaders in the sector, people like Anup, Mayank, Jeet, and all our insurance CEOs and CXOs are facing in the current context. So at one level, you've got huge level of awareness of the need for insurance. At another level, you've got a huge number of challenges that need to be overcome for the companies to be able to fulfill that opportunity in a seamless, frictionless manner, given the operating challenges that have been thrown up by COVID. The one other good thing that we have seen happening is the level of digital adoption by customers and distributors has increased significantly. So people, for the sake of their own safety, are happy to do business through remote channels. People, for their own safety, don't want to go into bank branches. They don't need to have someone come and sell an insurance product. They're happy to do stuff online, provided the companies can deliver that experience to them. So clearly, digital adoption has increased, levels of awareness have increased, operating constraints have to be overcome. And in a nutshell, if a company is agile, if their processes are strong and resilient, and if they're able to quickly innovate, create empathy and trust with customers and partners and stakeholders alike, and accelerate the digital acceleration, the digital transformation journey that almost all insurers are already on, then it presents a fantastic opportunity. So I truly believe, and we truly believe, that the men and the boys will get separated in a matter of the next 18 to 24 months. Those who are agile, those who are resilient in their operations, those who are able to accelerate digital transformation will have a huge advantage and be able to seize on this opportunity and get on a path of profitable and sustainable growth.
Sure. Thank you very much, Sandeep. I like the phrase you said, men's will get separated from boys altogether. So stronger companies will replace the weaker companies get replaced by them. And so is with the management team all across. Mike, if I could just come to you, you're in a very unique position. Health insurance is experiencing a growth. Unheard of, that kind of a growth. So what's your take? What's your take on the health insurance? Positive, negative? What's the overall trend you see in this context?
More broadly, Rajendra, I think the fact that this is a once in a century event, to me, this is the once in a lifetime opportunity to change stuff that one had been thinking about and one couldn't do. So it's really how each one of us individually and as an organization can really respond to. Mm-hmm. So from a category perspective, the category has been witnessing this whole thing of, customers saying, why health insurance? How is it relevant for us? It's unfortunately that, the trigger for this is a COVID-19 situation, but what else would the category need to really make consumers realize that health insurance is required? And I think from me, there's no better lens than that in the way businesses have to respond. Consumers are now saying, you do any research, what's your number one priority? Health. And the important thing is, it's not just for my health, it's about my family's health, my extended family's health, and many of them are saying actually the broader community health, right? And health insurance is about health if we look at it that way. So I think the opportunity is significant. The question is that how do you convert that opportunity into, how do you reach the customer? And how do you reach the customer in the way customer wants to interact with you right now? And sure. I guess, which is what some of the stuff that Sandeep was saying. And I think, do you interact with them as just an insurance provider, or interact with them as a provider who's now willing to talk to them about their health and be seen as someone who, like, they are by the customer as an organization which is interested in my health and not just selling me a policy. So I think that's the larger opportunity that I see. And if you see the results of the first 3 months, I think that's what is clearly showing what's happening between different players and how they've been able to respond to the situation. So and of course it means that you'll have to create newer capabilities or enhance newer capabilities. digital is like, I don't want to talk, say too much about it, but because, it's, everyone understands that. But digital is not about going out and creating, one asset or investing in digital. Is about mindset, right? Are you thinking digitally? Are you thinking?
Absolutely.
Digital is a completely different world. It's not about, taking your stuff into the digital world and say, oh, I have now, but, I've trained my people on, using my app and all. That's not the way it is. I think it's a very different way of interacting, whether it's employees, people say work from home. Work from home is not about just working from home. It's about a, virtual work mindset, virtual, collaboration. All of those issues will come up. So great opportunity for health insurance in summary. I think, I don't think so. We could get any opportunity better than this to make the business more relevant for consumers.
So there's certainly an opportunity to build a career in health insurance, right? To start with, if someone is looking for launching himself or herself. So that's thank you very much, Mike. And I agree with you. I think digital is not about the device itself. Most of the people are confused between device and the what digital is all about. And especially from a training perspective, I pick up, this is a mindset here, okay?
Yeah.
Because selling digitally is not about the science. It is the art of selling through digital. And therefore, how do you bring the softer aspects, engagement, emotions when you're selling something like insurance and health insurance all together? So Anu, before I come to you, let me go to Jeet. Jeet, you have the biggest task right now, okay? From a people's perspective. One data is from the Psychiatric Society of India is telling there are 35% increase in the mental health issues in the country since the time the lockdown has started, right? What's your take as a human resources head of one of the largest life insurance company? What's your opening comment on this?
No, so it is certainly the good part of it is that it's out in the open. Normally, as a society, we don't talk about mental health. So I think the great thing that has happened is that people are discussing it openly, right? And very early on, when the lockdown happened, I think one of the things we did as an organization was to create an employee assistance program. We tied up with a service provider who does telecounseling. If people need help, we realize that for extended period, if people have to be in a lockdown mode, and there will be challenges which they have not been accustomed to in terms of working from home and also managing family at home. So, but having said that, out of the employee base that we have, which is around 15,000, around 40-50 people have availed of it in the last 2.5-3 months. Mm-hmm. So it is not as if it's a large number yet. Probably the incidence of, the fact is that definitely it's a higher incidence of the entire spectrum of mental health, from depression to anxiety to coping in terms of dealing with some of the issues thrown up by the lockdown. Also a sense of, if you were to ask me a step back, definitely we see a lot of anger in social media. We see people, and that is anxiety coming out, or frustration coming out, because the fact of the matter is a lot of things are out of your control. So in that sense, maybe the thought process that is overwhelming people is, how do I cope? And that is obviously not coming out as anxiety, it's coming out as anger and frustration. And we see that definitely. So I will not be able to put a number to it, but what I would welcome, and I'm very happy about, and in that sense, that we are discussing it so openly, which, I mean, I can't think of the last 25 years where we've discussed mental health ever. So thanks for bringing it up. And since it was specific to that, I'm leaving it here, and maybe we can talk more about it or other things as we go forward.
So one of the things I'm capturing is to create helplines where people can reach out and talk to people and seek professional help. Is one of the messages that you're giving in your opening comments?
That is there, and I think what people are talking about really are two, 3 issues. One is they're talking about how to manage their children. That is one thing that's coming out from the feedback that we've got. There is obviously a lot of, so most of the issues of mental health are also personal. It's not necessarily work related. I wanted to just flag that off. Right. How do I deal with my children? How do I deal with my spouse? Because, and for a lot of women employees, being stuck at home means you have to additional burden of doing both housework and office work. So that is a bigger challenge, in fact.
Absolutely. The biggest fear is about the job loss and what will happen. Will I grow, not grow, organization shrink?
That is unstable.
So we'll come to that in a minute's time, because some of these are very deep fears people are living with. But Anup, let me invite you. among all of us, you're a very unique one. You worked in insurance, life insurance. You worked in general insurance now. So what's your opening comment? COVID-19, positive, negative for general insurance, not for life insurance right now.
Okay, so thanks, Rajendra, and good evening, everyone. So I'll try not to repeat what the co-panelists have said. So I just have so let me just talk about insurance and get it out of the way first. I do believe that in the short term, there are obviously challenges around productivity because people are yet to adapt to this new way of working. But the way I see this is that appreciation for insurance will go up in the medium term. So I do expect 2021, 2022 to be very good years for the industry. I think Mike mentioned this is once in a century event, and I think it's created appreciation for insurance in the minds of the customer. So that's one. The other thing is, financial services industry is pretty boring in the sense that we have undifferentiated products and we depend largely on distribution. So all of us, we went to B school and we learned about the 4 P's of marketing, right? We only use 1 P, which is price. So either you have a high charge product or a low charge product, you have a motor product with a lower price, you have a health product with greater coverage or a lower price. There's very little differentiation that we do. I think companies will be forced to where the customer learns now to a greater degree than they have in the past. And that's actually good for the industry, in my opinion, because largely what do organizations do? They talk about a product design, they talk about distribution acceptability. See, look at how ridiculous it has been. See, since 2008, and all of us, at least 4 of us here, except Mike, maybe Mike for that matter, I worked in the life insurance industry. All of us will agree that post 2008, the life insurance products became more competitive. Post 2010, there was regulatory intervention to make ULIPs very competitive. And sales actually plummeted. In 2015, we actually had lower top line than 2008, despite having superior products. That's because we were not using distribution effectively, because distribution didn't find it viable to reach out to the customer.
Right.
And I blame companies for that because we never developed or tried to develop a customer franchise. We invested heavily in building a distribution franchise. So I think that's a change which is going to be more long-lasting and permanent. So we'll actually start selling consumer products rather than distributor or push-led products. I think the other thing the situation has also brought to the fore is long-term versus short-term thinking. Now, my take is that, in the short term, I think we're reacting to pressures around, around the economy contracting or demand contraction. But I do see that in the medium term, and I can't speak about the long term, but 2022, 2021, I do see as great years because I think people appreciate insurance. I've never got so many calls, and this is feedback I get from a lot of other leaders, people talking about household insurance, people, small shopkeepers and restaurant owners saying that, look, do you have a product for me? People talking about health insurance. People actually are wanting to find out what exactly does motor cover or does not cover. Now, and it also brings to the other question of adaptability. Now, there's this very interesting statistic from my company I could share. About 30% of the employees currently are contributing to 90% of the top line, which means obviously certain employees have adapted or actually thrived under these circumstances. They've used the situation to their advantage. They don't waste time commuting, going to office.
Right.
They don't waste time in meetings. I think people have realized it's more important to be effective. It is content over form, not form over content. I mean, so as long as you can get delivery, you deliver and you can get work done, you'll be rewarded. So I think that's an upside. I mean, I've never seen such extreme Paretos. I mean, our company has actually grown in this quarter. We've got double-digit growth under these COVID times. But then I just want to say that's been driven by very few employees actually done extremely well. So I do see a lot of opportunity. I see more pluses than minuses. I would just caution people against overreacting to the situation and taking an overtly pessimistic view because, we have the adaptive gene. We will figure out a way to overcome this and adapt to the new reality. People still will need to eat food. People will still buy insurance, will still buy products. The nature of the way they spend products, the way they engage with each other, that contract might change. But those needs aren't going to go away.
Sure.
So,
Thank you, Anup. Thank you very much. Mike, I'll come to you on a very interesting subject of digital that you touched upon. But before that, I want to go to Sandeep and ask this question. A lot of people have this challenge right now, and I see this as a challenge, but many life insurance companies have sold guaranteed products in the past. The investment portfolios they have managed right now looks like they'll have to go through a rejig because the kind of investment returns are coming. The July results are still awaited, right? economy is going to de-shrink, the impact will be huge. So what do you see? How do you see on the life insurance side, do you see consolidation happening, or you see new players coming into it on the life insurance and health insurance side, or you see no new player and the existing guys will get merged and acquired? That's one. And then what happens to the capital requirement? Because there's a commitment given to everything. So where the capital going to come? There's no lending happening. Capital is not easily available. So on these two things, what's your take on this right now? And then I'll come to Mayank on the digital side of skilling, reskilling, and what mindset need to change from that perspective to you. And then you can add on to what Sandeep is going to talk about it, right? So as a CEO's perspective. Sandeep, over to you.
Yeah, sure, Rajinder. So in terms of, COVID, it's clearly been disruptive for the industry. The life sector with, LIC having between 60 to 70% market share, and the next 3 or 4 players having then close to another 20 odd % market share results in a fact that, there is a huge sort of divide between the large, haves and have-nots, if I can use that word. The situation in GI is not as, as I think Vijay mentioned in his opening remarks, the 4 public sector companies have about 40-45% market share. And then, the 3-4 market leaders, if you add them together also, it doesn't get to 90 plus, it gets to maybe 70-75% market share. So clearly, I think at one level, it appears that the industry is ripe for some level of consolidation and likely to be accelerated by the events of COVID, where, as I mentioned, even in my opening remarks, that the differentiation between the men and the boys will become even more apparent 18 months down the line.
Right.
However, there are a few factors that also come in the way of rapid consolidation. Now, because you have a 51-49 cap that, Indian shareholders can obviously have full 100%, but foreign shareholders can only go up to 49. You have situations where an Indian shareholder may want to exit, but the foreign shareholder cannot increase their stakes because they are already capped at 49. And in order for that company to either consolidate with another player, merge with another player, or for a new entrant to come in and participate in that company, you have to fit into that matching of, are you coming with are you an Indian shareholder coming with Indian funds, or are you a foreign shareholder? A private equity has been very active in this space, but barely 3 or 4 private equity players actually come under the definition of Indian shareholder. A vast majority of the private equity players come in as in the category of foreign shareholders. So they are capped at that 49%. Sure. So clearly, industry consolidation is also limited to some extent because of the way the shareholding and the JVs have been constructed and the FDI cap. If like in banking or asset management, insurance had no FDI cap or a cap that was higher than 49% for foreign shareholding, I would reckon that we would see much faster consolidation, mergers, more mergers and acquisitions and consolidation happening. Having said that, I must say that in the last 3 months, we have been ourselves in the midst of at least 5 or 6 due diligence conversations. And these straddle life and general insurance. So they're not all in life insurance. In fact, from an investment thesis point of view, there is more interest in the Indian GI sector than in the life sector. And that again stems from the fact that if you're a life company without a strong bank assurance partnership, other than LIC, it's very difficult to really figure out how the company can be a top 5, top 10 player. So you again rule out a lot of deals because of that. Now, all due diligences don't naturally lead to deals, but there has been a significant interest, and a lot of that has come from the PE community. There are a few strategics also who have been interested. It's in the public domain that Navi Technologies, a company purported by Sachin Bansal, has bought DHFL's general insurance business quite recently. So there are a few people who've come in as strategic investors, but a lot of the financial investing community, largely private equity, are also looking at the life insurance and general insurance and health insurance space with a very, very active interest. And it ties back to the point that I made, that Mayank also said, that Anup also said, that this is the moment of truth for the insurance industry in India in a way to, it's an inflection point. And that has obviously increased the investor appetite. So answer to your question is yes, I do anticipate more mergers, acquisitions, and consolidation. But the pace of that and the number of deals and transactions is somewhat constrained because of FDI caps.
Thank you very much, Sandeep. So you see, I'm sensing, you said there's also a very active P equity that may come into it. The private equity players will be more seen in case of capital needed. Capital needed is because of the expense ratio going out of control and sales dropping. So I thank you for that. Mayank, I mean, I'm just picking on where Sandeep just said, our traditional life insurance distribution model has been led by proprietary channels and banca, right? And that looks like suddenly in this last 2.5 months time, this looks like under a lot of question, at least in my mind, right? What's your take? You see in the future, companies continue to remain invested with proprietary channels of having offices, high expense ratios because of the occupancy cost and employees there, or you see digital, first from an acquisition point of view, from the growth engine perspective, you see a shift happening on that side in the boardroom discussion, number one, and then coming back to the other system, what kind of ecosystem life insurance companies and health insurance companies will be required to really flourish and thrive in this new normal of digital?
Yeah, I mean, whether agency will not be relevant, I mean, I don't think so. I mean, agency will be relevant, ultimately the distribution, channels are not an issue. The question is the distribution models that you apply so, whether the role of an insurance agent, I mean, I don't think so will go away. When the role of a bank in selling insurance will not go away because they have access to customers. The question is the approach that they were taking to acquire customers, will that change? And that definitely will change. So agent, for example, I mean, I spoke about things that we all have been trying to change, and here is the moment, right? I mean, India, for example, I always feel that in the Indian agency model is a very inefficient model where you're dealing with 90-95% part-time guys, and who are probably have a few meetings in a month, and physical meetings, and they don't find. Now suddenly in a digital environment, think about the change that it can happen, right? I'll give you an example. Now, in our case, we started, I told my team about a couple of years back that, we've got such large agency, we've got 25,000 advisors. Now, why can't you segment the advisors and train them the way exactly the training that they wish versus the traditional physical model of getting them into a training room, or you'll say, you want good training, so you'll go a 3-star hotel, 4-star hotel, and you will train there if you all kind of stuff. But you can get the best trainer to train in that language to the particular segment of customers virtually, right? Now suddenly that training becomes so much more relevant. Similarly, hiring, right? I mean, you can do leverage digital to hire customers at scale. You can do a business of career opportunity presentation to a or a BOP or whatever we call it, to an advisor prospect at scale by the best guy. So I think the model will change. Leveraging digital technology will change. Some companies and their agency forces will adapt to it much faster than the others, and I think that is a shift that will definitely happen. Now, whether that means I don't need such a large agency branch, which typically, like in the HI side, typically the branches are much smaller. In LI, from my experience, they used to be much larger, though there was a shift towards smaller one. Will that need for real estate come down? Absolutely, it will come down like all other parts of the organization. Mm-hmm. I don't think the role is going away. I think it's an opportunity for the agency forces in India, which we've been trying to do for some time, to make them more professional, use it. And I think that is definitely a shift that I expect to see in whether it's in life insurance or health insurance, because both these categories do need the role of an advisor to sell. Now, what does it mean in how will the organization respond to it? What is it that is required to do that? I guess different organization will, respond very differently. And it is very evident, I find like in the last 2-3 months, the agency force, they're clearly on the lines of what Anup said. Some, agency managers, some advisors have really, increased their sales by 200-300%. They have just thoroughly leveraged, they've enjoyed this. I mean, in this situation, because they say, I'm now able to reach out to so many more customers. I'm able to kind of explain it so much better. I can leverage, the technology to, explain my point so much better. I can, so I think I can, quickly in the same call loop in the best expert from wherever he or she is available in the organization. I think all of those different organizations are ready at different stages. And so I don't see a change in to your question on the role of those distribution model. I think the approach will change, and that we definitely need to. And I think the other thing there is that we can now attract a very different profile of people to our workforce. We can now, because virtual is, digital is becoming, the whole willingness to adapt it is so much more today. Why should women not be a much larger part of the workforce in sales? I mean, why should they not be? Today, and I think here's an opportunity, great opportunity, right? I mean, I recently did a webinar for a large number of women prospects and advisors, and we were planning to do that for 1 hour. That session, Rajendra, went on for 2.5 hours.
Wow.
And and so the point is that that workforce needs flexibility. You can now give it, you can now give technology. Of course, the demand for the insurance is more, so that I think that is a great enabler. And same way in the workforce at in the organization as well. I think I'm extremely optimistic at in time ahead, given where we are today.
So I see two messages for all the folks who are attending this and participating in the webinar today. One, all the branch managers, zone vice president, regional managers from the channel who are listening to this webcast, to this webinar. I think there's an opportunity for what I hear from you, Mayank, is that if we can change and make salespeople reskilled on the digital sales, therefore the effectiveness can go up, because the sheer number of activities, which number of calls they're doing can go up, and therefore earning opportunity goes up. When the earning opportunity goes up, retention improves, and therefore that's a big opportunity. And the second you're saying is look at gender diversity, which you never looked at it. Traditionally sales have been dominated by male people, and therefore the message is if you can look at women workforce and in the digital environment, there can be a potential opportunity for you to expand and recruit much more differently altogether. Those are the two big opportunities I see you conveying to the team right now.
Yeah, I just want to add there, diversity. I just took an example of women. I think to me, diversity is much more. Diversity is about physically challenged people who can now suddenly sitting at home do this, right?
Absolutely.
Why should they not be there? And I think in India, this is one of the lowest. I mean, I've worked in Indonesia and spent some time in Malaysia, and I remember 60% of the workforce there. In agency used to be women, and the 90% of the most successful used to be women. Why can that not happen in India in a category like insurance, where trust I mean, it's unfortunately it's all male panel here, but the fact is, so and so please don't get me. The fact is, people attach trust more to women to men.
Yes, I agree.
So, why should it it not be a natural choice?
And also the empathy and compassion comes, especially when you're selling life insurance. As a mother, if I'm a family person, right? So for me to convey what the needs, financial security needs are, that comes so much naturally for a caring mother. So outstanding. Thank you very much. I know, Sandeep, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, just 30 seconds. What Anup and Mayank have said is absolutely bang on. The proprietary channels, agency and direct sales, are actually doing better than the banca channel, which was very heavily dependent on walk-in customers into the branch to be able to solicit policies. So I'm not making a across-the-board statement about every banca distribution out there, but in a lot of companies, agency and DD and direct sales force has been able to transform, and maybe it is the top 30% who've been able to make that transformation. So the data is already coming through where proprietary distributors and channels which have been able to make the transformation are faring better than bank assurance. Point one. Point two, on diversity, it's not just gender, and I think Mayank makes a fabulous point about even physically challenged and handicapped people. The other thing is, in Canada, they went and reskilled air hostesses and airline staff to work as healthcare workers. Now, can the insurance sector not look at people in travel, hospitality, retail who are losing their jobs to come and join the sector?
Absolutely.
Because this is a great time to go and recruit people who are actually suffering because their sectors are very, very badly impacted.
Very good. That's a good insight from in sectors which are not doing, recruit people from there. Jeet, that's the message Sandeep is giving. But let me ask you. I know Anup, I have a very specific question for you. But let me ask this question of Jeet right now. Jeet, what are the paradigm shifts? Which paradigms of yours have shifted in the last 2 months' time? And how are you enabling the CEOs, the leadership team, the branch managers to really, really overcome this challenge of employee engagement, keeping them in absolutely secured, emotionally secured state of mind, and then improving productivity? So first question is, आपके क्या paradigm change हुए हैं? पहला question है, as an HR head, right? And the second is how you think human resources heads can contribute to the CEOs and the leadership team to manage this whole change management and engagement of employees.
Okay. Yeah. So, I think this is the first time in a long time, I think, when employee health and safety became the #1 business priority. Ever since COVID happened, if I look at any progressive organization, any organization which believes in its employees, right? I mean, have everybody across the board have gone above and beyond to make sure that their colleagues are safe. And insurance has been, since it was an essential service, of course, we had to also manage keeping our branches open and having our employees go. So across many of these companies, lots of initiatives have happened in terms of enhancing the proposition of employee health and safety. So let me talk about 2, 3, 4 things that we did. One is, early on, when we realized that, of course, if you have symptoms, then people will need doctor teleconsultation. We have access to a pool of doctors for underwriting. We tied up with them for teleconsultation with employees. Second part is, you need testing support for COVID. So there are wellness providers we tied up with to enable testing support. So anybody who has a symptom, if the doctor believes that you need to go through for COVID testing, we organize it for you. Third part, like I mentioned in my earlier comment about the employee assistance program where you can do telecounseling, that happened. Of course, since we're now moving to work from home, enabling work from home, as far as the IT infrastructure part of it, getting it 100% done. If somebody asked me before COVID, do you envisage a situation where every employee will work from home? I wouldn't have believed it. But we actually, across the board, again, organizations have done the impossible. Everybody moved to a work from home and it was pretty seamless. I think in 10, 15 days, laptops were issued, VPN connections were done, remote help desks were organized, Zooms were downloaded, moving on to WebEx, moving on to Microsoft Teams, all of that. And a lot of development is happening in terms of how do I, at the last mile, connect my distributor or my agent or my field sales with the customer through applications which will work with my sales management system. That interface is getting built. So clearly, the #1 priority was business priority. And I'm saying this is unique. #1 business priority became employee health and safety because no organization, like in a democracy, you can afford a death. No organization can also afford to do things which endanger employee health and safety. So this is the first of its kind in a long time, I would say. Moving on from there, clearly now we have moved away to obviously employee productivity and employee engagement, as you rightly pointed out. So the interesting thing has been organizations again adopted digital learning, digital R&R, digital farewells. A senior colleague of mine, we did a digital farewell, so anything and everything is now, onboarding is happening digitally. And it's all possible. And the fact of the matter is, it's less than 90 days, right? If you think about April, May, June, pretty much in 90 days, you've achieved all this, right? So that definitely has created in a sense, the point about mindset shift. I think people have adapted to it. If I look at people doing digital courses, of course they're doing it. I mean, all that is happening. Now, the question now is how to make them productive in terms of sales and getting them to work. But that remains a challenge. And the productivity has two dimensions. And I think part of it is one important point for any organization to recognize is, are we, if we really believe that human capital is our greatest asset, are we with our employees? So one of the decisions we also took was to give increments to a large number of our frontline and our frontline managers. There was a big debate because it's a cost. We don't have visibility in terms of how the year is going to look like. As of now, even now, on the savings business side, it's a challenge. Yes, protection, term policies pickup is great, and that's definitely a shift we see. Definitely we see a shift in consumers or customers accepting the digital mode of getting serviced. That's clearly a trend that we see, but productivity has to finally add up in terms of increased revenues and increased, so that is yet to happen. And I think the challenge here is, in the short term, the economic contraction that is there, and I don't think we can wish it away. So this is a thin balance. We talk about empathetic leadership, but at the same time, as an organization, we need the salesy edge to get the numbers, right? So how do you balance this? How do you make sure it doesn't step over and become coercive beyond a point? And I think that's where we're encouraging. And Zoom is a fabulous way. Like we said, you can do BOPs on through webinars and Zoom. There's been a huge step up in terms of, and we are encouraging managers to do what we call our coffee and connect sessions, where the manager talks to his team over Zoom. HR does that. So there is definitely a lot of step up in that, and that in a physical world would not have been possible. But coming back to one point about this work from home bit, I mean, the question is, are we going to see this as a positive movement? I think definitely. Again, the question, if you were to look at the analysis of jobs across the organization, I would say, I mean, technically speaking, none of my frontline sales force needs to come to office. So I can run a branch agnostic model, except for customer servicing, where some customers may want to come to a physical office for their requirements, and that option should be there. The fact of the matter is, today organizations are enabled to run branch agnostic models. And if you think about it 10 years back or even 3 years back, the thought about expanding business meant more offices and more people, right? So clearly there is going to be a recalibration of that. The fact is, people are going to be more productive. Just imagine the long commutes. 2 hours people, it used to take people to come to work and go back home, and the stress of that commute, all that is gone. So if you look at 4 hours in a day, you're automatically more productive. So all this is welcome, I would say. And more importantly, it gives people the flexibility. So I think the world is clearly, I mean, like everybody's saying, it's a reset, not just in terms of consumer preferences shifting, not only a reset in terms of how consumers would like to make their purchase decisions. And an anecdotal thing I want to share here is, I mean, we have some household help during the lockdown, because they can't go out. They started buying things on Amazon, right? I'm finding them paying, they're using mobile banking. And these are people at segments we don't even give insurance to. So that is the power of what digital can do. It opens up new markets, new opportunity pools. And I think just opens up an enormous opportunity pool, which you could not have probably envisaged in a physical context. So finally, in terms of, it's too early to say how this is going to shape up. Clearly, as we said, there are early adopters and they will continue to thrive. There will be laggards, and this is going to be a challenge in every setup. I think, like Sandeep probably started, is going to shift the men from the boys. I think, again, is the question of, the only point I want to make about agility is not so much about speed only, it's also about mental agility. It's about flexibility and how you think about this. It's not, I mean, because you can run faster on the treadmill, but you're not going to get anywhere. So I think the cognitive flexibility that everybody needs to bring to the table, because there are some hard-coded truths about life insurance. That insurance is a push product. What term is showing, there is so much pull, we are not able to satisfy the demand, right? There is another question that insurance is a low transaction product, but it's a very product-centric approach. The moment you say insurance is a product and service bundled together, there is an enormous opportunity to provide services digitally. And services could be many things that you can create an ecosystem for to provide to customers. So, I mean, I see the general insurance, there's a lot of stuff there. I mean, People are offering health insurance products
Absolutely.
with doctor teleconsultation, everything else. So life insurance hasn't innovated to that extent. I think that's a huge opportunity. So these are my top line comments on these. So
yeah. I agree with you. And you know, I work with the healthcare side very extensively with doctors across Max Hospitals right now. And I never ever thought doctors will be doing e-consulting, video consulting. And I wonder why doctors called us to the hospital for so many years altogether, right? I mean, and they're still treating people, right?
Absolutely.
So, and that's a big paradigm
It's
shift
demolished
in
many
my
myths.
mind. Yeah, I'll come to Anup, and then I have one question. And the question is that in terms of, do we see jobs going up, coming down? That's a big question. I think that's a question. And most of the people who I had a chance to talk, they also have this whole need. How do I overcome this fear? I understand fear should not come, but Anup, in the case of general insurance typically have a portfolio 30-35%, 40% coming from motor, coming from commercial, and then coming from health insurance. Do you see a portfolio rejig happening in general insurance? Yes or no?
So I think there are 2-3 questions on that. One is, yes, I do see a portfolio rejig, because I think largely we also guilty, while not as boring as life, and I've been on both sides. So I'm not picking, choosing one over the other, but motor again has been guilty. I mean, general has been guilty of choosing motor over other lines of business, because that's an easy sale, right? It's mandatory. People want to buy motor insurance. You bundle the own damage along with third party and sell it. But I do expect demand for other kinds of insurance to go up. I mean, health for sure. And I also see demand for business interruption products and household contents insurance and fire and home insurance, shopkeepers and establishment insurance, so on and so forth to come. So I do expect the portfolio to expand in that sense, and significantly. So health, for instance, and we are not a standalone health company, but then we are also consistently been doubling our volume, but we are obviously on a very small base compared to some of the standalone health insurers. Motor would continue to grow, but it's going to be a function of not penetration so much, but more about how well the motor industry does. But I do see demand for other products coming up. Job losses, yes. I think jobs are a function of your ability to adapt and reskill yourself. And nature of jobs will change, but I think jobs will exist. I think Jeet made that point. I never really understood the point of why we have that morning huddle in branches, and every single consultant, every single manager told us, nahi, subah 9 baje meeting hona chahiye. If somebody comes in late, you should go after him. And again, you call up the same guys in the evening and ask them, aaj kitna kiya. I mean, Rajinder, you and I have been through that cycle many times over, but and I've done it. I've been guilty. I mean, I've done it as a unit manager, as a branch manager. I've done the same thing, and really a lot of the stuff we do is non-value adding. I mean, commute is obviously non-value adding. I think interestingly, I've been personally involved in a lot of joint sales calls, especially to corporate clients, which I didn't think was possible unless you went physically and then met people and then did some small talk, developed some chemistry, and then got down to business. So I think nature of interaction, nature of jobs will undergo a change. I think there's been change on the digital front, and it's not been just because of what's happened in the last three months. I mean, it's obviously gotten accelerated. But for instance, we as a company, we had Microsoft Teams. We were using Teams all this while. The rate of adoption has obviously accelerated ever since this COVID situation has happened. So and adding to what Sandeep and Mayank said, I mean, I think channels or processes or jobs, I think the way you apply them change. I think, but then they'll still remain. I think I've still seen agents be extremely productive, but the nature of their interaction with the customer has changed. I mean, I told you about our experiences on the productivity side. Some people have done extremely well. So I don't see jobs going away, but I think it's very important. And using COVID as an example, I must tell you something. I didn't know this, but then our immune system is adaptive in nature. And there's something a doctor told me. So how vaccines are developed is that if a foreign antibody which is introduced, I mean, agent introduced to your body, and it creates an antibody, and later on you get immune to it. And that's how a vaccine is developed. People who are immunocompromised are the ones who actually die early in some shape or form. Either, they get some other diseases or they don't live long enough. But it's again got the same application to your professional life. In case you're adaptive enough and in case you can adapt, jobs will follow you. But
so adaptability, the change to the new thing is important, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you, Anup. Mayank, job going up or coming down in health insurance? Unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, I mean, if the industry is going to grow, there's no reason why the jobs will not, go. The only thing is that relevant jobs. So you need to have relevant kind of experiences, and just on that.
Let me, sorry to interrupt you. Let me ask a blunt question, okay? This whole branch manager jobs are going to go up, come down, or you see more people employed at the front line, but digitally, and therefore we need less of branch manager, less of regional managers. That's the question probably if I have to ask you.
Yeah, so good point. So I think that's what I was coming to, that relevant jobs, right? So you need more frontline people. You need more. See, today, all of us, and I think Jeet will be the expert in that, coming from HR, that all of us know that if we really do a thorough look at the kind of supervisory layers we keep creating, over a period of time, and especially as organizations, become legacy organizations, and if you look at them, would you really need that level of what is the role? I mean, every time we ask this question that, is your role an aggregator role, or are you really differentiating as a span breaker? So I think relevant roles. So branch managers, the question is not whether the branch manager will be required or not. Question is whether branch manager of relevant skill will be required now.
Relevant skills will be
required. So the role you have to play now is very different than just, as Anup said, get them into a morning huddle and, get them to sing a song. Sings a song. So, you come and sing a song. So I think all that will change.
Yeah.
So
in fact, these days there's a Zoom huddle meeting happening, check-in and check-out meetings on the Zoom. So that's a new trend I'm picking up. But Sandeep, yes or no, jobs going to go up or going to come down?
Jobs, absolute number will go up in the insurance sector. But it's very important. I think the points that my colleagues are making, you focused a lot, Rajendra, on the sales roles. But let me tell you, globally, with digital adoption and digital transformation, some of the very traditional insurance jobs, that of claims, underwriting, people who go and do actually inspections, those jobs are the ones that are most at risk. Because if you're going to digitally process claims, if you're going to have pre-underwritten products, if you're going to have more and more of that happening, and what that will get compensated by is more statisticians, data analysts, jobs in technology. Now, it may well be that the insurance company may directly or indirectly employ them. You may have third parties who are delivering your tech transformation programs. So jobs overall from the insurance sector and the insurance ecosystem will go up. But the nature of those jobs and where it will go up and where it will come down, there's going to be a significant change. And it's already happened globally, even before COVID. COVID is only going to accelerate this.
Right.
Thank you very much. There's one point, one strong point of view. I think spans of controls will go up significantly. I think the classical model span of 8, I think that number will easily double with technology and the kind of tools that we have. That's a given.
Thank you, Anup. Yeah, Mike, you wanted to say something?
No, just to add to what Sandeep said, right? I mean, our partners from MMI, I remember, when, I visited that operation, 96% of their claims and of course, in those countries, you have all pharmacy are paperless, humanless, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not that, you don't need people. It's just that the role will change. So in their environment, the people who are there in the claims organization is actually the doctors who are now working with customers to, help them deal with that situation rather than process their claims.
Sure. Very good. Jeet, I'm very curious to ask one question and mindful of the time. And then I want to wrap up this by asking one common question to everybody. But Jeet, in the hiring process, do you see anything from a competency point of view, attributes point of view, that will start looking out for more and less on few competencies? So are you going to see any change on that side? What kind of people you'll be looking out for? Let's focus on the sales right now for various reasons. Do you see any attribute that you'll be focusing more at the time of hiring in the frontline sales guys, branch managers and above, in leaders for that matter?
Yeah, so let me take a stab at it, because this will, see, fundamentally, as I see it, the whole entire hiring, I think Mayank alluded to it, the whole hiring process will also be digitized, right? You will have a recruiter. I don't think that's going to go away, but it will be again virtual. So whether you do a video interview or whether you do and with the video interview can also have a AI backed software which also looks at responding to your answers to the questions and sort of does a scoring model like you do in many situations. And but the good part, as I see it, is the whole recruitment process being digitized will enable a large number of filters to be put in place. Right? India doesn't have a problem of supply. We have large number. We have 30-40 lakh graduates who come out every day. So if you look at the question for us is, who do you eliminate and who do you select? Right? I mean, to me, it's less of a selection problem than an elimination problem because of the sheer supply that is there. And so the challenge is, which was there earlier, because it was in a physical model of hiring and you had to hire large numbers at very short time, you didn't do justice to the selection process or even the elimination process. It just became a sort of a sense check on basis of which a lot of hiring decisions were made. I think the whole digital recruitment, if the moment you digitize the recruitment, automatically you can put filters. You can give much more in terms of information, which will help the person and the candidate also to decide whether this is the right job for him or her, or this is the right organization for him or her. Right? So a lot of the early attrition that happens in the industry can also get taken care of that way. And let me tell you one thing, I discovered this accidentally. A colleague of mine actually took up a job with Amazon and he went through 7 rounds of interviews. And I was quite perplexed. I mean, who would do 7 rounds of interviews? But what I realized is that he had invested so much of his time and so many filters that after that, to say no to the offer, though he had absolutely no grievance working with us, was impossible. Because it was like you cross one hurdle, you go to the second hurdle, you do the third hurdle, you're now totally invested in, now you reach the mountain peak. Now you can't say, I will leave all this and go back to the same place. So my learning from that is, so the answering your question, will we look for, I think some of the things that every organization looks for ultimately in anybody is resilience. You know, do you have the motivation fit to do the job? You can build up this in a digital world much more easily. Rather than doing 7 physical rounds of interviews, you can put enough number of filters. It could be aptitude tests, could be video interviews, could be doing maybe a gamified quiz, which helps you understand about life insurance as a thing. So there are many opportunities to create a journey for an employee hiring and onboarding process that will make the selection process more robust. And that's the way I would like to answer it.
Thank you, Jeet. My particular sense is, Sandeep and Mayank and Anup, is that, you know, one of the competency shift that will be required for all of us, whether you are a frontline leader or whether you are a CXO, is that how do you align and how do you collaborate digitally? Because this is here to stay. So there's a big shift required. Okay. And the second is on a day-to-day engagement, this whole balance of task versus relationship, because how do you, and because task and relationship is not about having a drink in the evening together anymore, right? It's about how do I really care for you? And if I care for you, at what level I care for you, and so on and so forth. So I do see, that's my view around it, but I just mindful of the time and I want to go to Sandeep first and then to Mayank and to everybody else. Last closing comment.
If you don't mind, I just want to make one small input before Sandeep, if you don't mind.
Please.
Go ahead.
So the limited point I was trying to make is that most skills at entry level can be learned. Like everybody can learn swimming.
Sure.
But everybody will not be an Olympic gold medalist.
Absolutely.
The question is, are you going to be good enough? And being good enough means that you have to stay invested in that and practice it for a certain length of time. Everybody can learn how to play tennis, provided you are interested in playing tennis or learn swimming. So like most frontline jobs, they're not cognitively very complex, right? And provided you have an aptitude for it, the question that we struggle with is, are you going to stay long enough to stay invested so that you learn the skill enough to succeed? And if you can provide that as a platform, and I think that is what digital will help us to do better at scale, faster.
Sure. Thank you very much. So Sandeep, if you were say 30, 35 years old today and facing this pandemic, right? What are the 3 most important messages to the people who are listening to us today to saying, here are the 3 things from your wisdom to stay relevant and stay happy for now and for the future? Very sharp, very quick, short.
Yeah, no, so absolutely. Thanks for that. So yeah, seldom in life do you get the benefit of wisdom in hindsight. But if I did have that, I think, look, we all understand the importance of health. And by health, I mean both mental and physical health. If I were 30, 35 years old, I would approach these themes and topics very differently, both for myself, my family, my ecosystem, friends, And I would just say that, if I ever felt that I needed help, I would go out there and seek that help rather than suppress it. We are conditioned to not ask for help, especially when it comes to mental health. Physical health, I think we're a little more open to going and saying, look, I have this problem or that problem. I think the second thing, you made this great point about, in this digital world, how do you evolve? How do you stay relevant? So I think just the learning skills, the focus on staying relevant. I've tried to do that, but I would lay much more emphasis on staying relevant in a rapidly evolving world. And that is soft skills, hard skills, a whole bunch of things. Let me just make one point on this. Anup and I know each other. I kind of know Mayank, Jeet and I, we kind of know each other. So we can, if I have to talk to any one of you now, I can do that because we've got a relationship or an equation, or we've known each other, or we know people in common. Imagine how difficult it is to have a prospecting call or any kind of a business conversation with someone you have no relationship, no connect. You don't know each other. I mean, that requires a wholly different skill. So even in terms of managing your own teams or external customers, partners, if you don't have a relationship to start with that existed in the pre-COVID world, and you have to start that relationship on a Zoom call, it's going to be a lot tougher. It's going to be a lot tougher, and we shouldn't underestimate that. Last point I'd make is, this whole crisis, the way the stock market's tanked, has also taught me the importance of asset allocation and portfolio diversification. Not something that I didn't know as a banker or a person in the FS industry, but I would again take expert and professional help at 30, 35 to make sure that I have the right insurance, that my financial assets are, I have the right asset allocation strategy and the right portfolio diversification strategy. So if a once in 100-year event happens, I don't find myself in a situation where I have a financial crisis to deal with on top of a pandemic. Those would be my three key takeaways.
Thank you very much, Sandeep. That's very relevant. So one of the things I say is, I learned this from my brother-in-law who retired as an air marshal. I asked him, I said, what is one mantra for success and happiness? He says, how many fingers do you have in your hand? I said, 10. He said, you got to have 10 friends, okay? 10 friends in life with whom you can pick up the phone and talk anything in life. So I think that's the message you give on relationships. So that's very relevant. Mayank, for all the young people, and you and me, all of us together, what are the three top most important wisdom, hindsight that you like to convey to the team? Hey guys, for you to remain floated, these are the three things.
Yeah, I'll probably repeat some stuff that Sandeep said, because if it's top three, I don't want to change it just because Sandeep has said. It's about what I believe in. So one is we moved on from IQ to EQ to what I call AQ, and I think we spoke about that adaptability quotient, right?
Yes.
The world is changing so fast that if you don't have the ability to adapt to it, and the adaptability thing, the only thing I'd like to say is that have an abundance mindset, right? I think if we really believe it's available. I mean, it's not. I don't think there's anything called scarcity in today's environment. Anything. I think the way technology is changing the whole world, and the way exponential technologies in all aspects are changing. When people are saying 100 will be the new normal age. I think so that abundance mindset, leading to the and being adaptable, right? One is that. I think what that needs is learning agility. And I think learning it's not about just getting out from college and ending. I think, if you have to be adaptable, you have to have the agility to learn. And what and learning is an ongoing process. Even at, in my position as a CEO, if I don't have learning agility, I don't think so I'm relevant in this environment at all. I mean, if there's no way, if I'm, yes. And I call it sometimes reverse mentorship, right? I mean, I need to have my two sons, one of them 21 and one of them 16, actually are my mentors in many ways. I mean, there are so many things that I would go to and, talk to them. So I say learn, just the willingness to, be a lifelong learner. I think that's the number two. And I think third is in, events like this. And also because I having been in this health insurance industry, and having set up an organization which the whole purpose of our organization is all about driving, families to, adopt health as a priority, because, you may have whatever, dreams and aspirations in life, but there's no way you can achieve them as your health is not with you. And I hope this situation kind of just amplifies that, more than at any other time. So your health, and the most important point is that it is completely in our control, right? We don't
Absolutely.
need to go out to anyone. It's my asset. It's my biggest asset. I own it. I have full control on it. So please don't give it to anyone, and please don't allow that to go away and lose any value. Only amplify that value. So that will be my plea.
Absolutely. I ask people question, who's your life partner? And they say, my wife. I say, your life partner is your body.
Yeah.
Treat your body like a temple, and we learned this when we were young. Health is wealth, and they say, worship your body like a temple, right? So thank you very much, Mike, for that. Anup, you can see Vijay and Kevin is here. We have Q&A coming up. Without going too much in detail, 3 key messages for everybody to stay optimistic and hopeful.
Okay, so I don't know if it's linked to the previous question, then okay, I'll just talk about 3 things which I think which are important. And I didn't follow them when I was 35, but I think one thing is that you take care of your health. You'll miss it when it's gone. And that's and as Mike pointed out, it's the asset is going to help you stay relevant, make money, earn. Second, make sure you deliver. Whatever job you do, make sure you deliver. Make sure you execute well. I think that is important. The last thing is that make sure you make enough number of friends.
Fantastic.
So that's it.
Thank you very much. Jeet, just to add on something, top 3 messages for people to remain optimistic, hopeful in the current situation.
No, so of course, I mean, this is not the first time we are seeing a crisis. There are many crises that we've seen in the last 25 years. At least I have worked. So I think the important thing in this is you have to be optimistic. I call it determined optimism, because you have to be determined about. And sports is a great place to look at. For example, if you take the analogy of cricket, and you have, I can think about the West Indies fast bowlers, and it's on a green top, and people, Joel Garner bowling at you. Then what do? You defend your wicket. So this is the time to hunker down and make sure you stay put and play each day as it comes. This is not the time for grand visions. This is not the time for, romantic dreams. This is the time to make sure that you survive. And transformation is not a magic wand. It will happen over a period of time. So you make sure that you're moving forward, inching forward every day. And of course, the issue here is, it's not about speed. It's agility. I want to differentiate between agility and speed. Agility is more in the mind. People assume that you do things fast. This is not about. Sometimes you have to go slow to go fast. And this is the time when you really make sure that you have, the word I use is emotional equilibrium. You stay calm, you stay focused, you work with optimism in a determined manner, and every storm can be weathered. Provided you're there you survive it. So survival is the most important.
Sure. Thank you very much. I'd just like to wrap up this and hand over to Vijay. In Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is documented over there. Arjuna asked Krishna, I said, Lord Krishna, write something for me. When I'm happy, in happy days, I must feel sad about it. And in sad days, I must feel happy about it. And he wrote, this shall also pass. Right? So जब आप खुश हैं, तो ये खुशी हमेशा नहीं रहने वाली है. आप दुखी हैं तो दुख हमेशा नहीं रहने वाले हैं. So this shall also pass. This is a temporary phase we're going through. My take is, thank you very much to all the panelists. Treat yourself with a lot of care, compassion, and love. Fall in love with your own self, because the happiness of the family revolves around all of us. So therefore, treat yourself, value health, relationship, friend. They're like glass balls. If they fall, they break. Career are like a tennis ball. They'll bounce back in many other forms altogether. So those are my closing comments. I just hand over to Vijay for the Q&A, and Kevin, over to you. Thank you very much, Sandeep, Mayank, Jeet, and Anup.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Rajendra, for those last golden words from you, and completely a believer of that. And I'm sure, as one of the panelists said, that look, we've seen many in last few decades, and I'm sure this too shall pass. With that, given the time constraint, let me move into Q&A. We picked up one relevant question to all the esteemed panelists. So let me begin with Mayank. Mayank, the question here is for you. We have seen a vast infection level in current pandemic, which is unfortunately here to stay. given the high cost that we keep hearing day in, day out, do you feel that the current cost of health insurance are sustainable, or will it need to major upward correction?
No, I don't think so. I mean, yeah, I mean the infection level is high, but given the pattern of claims today, I don't think so. There's any reason to believe that the insurance premiums should go up, because on the one hand you have COVID claims, but on the other hand, I would say the positive and some thing is that unnecessarily hospitalization is not happening, right? So
Yeah.
And sometimes all said and done, we know of several cases where the treatment could have happened at home, and by the way, that is creating another category of treatment, and home healthcare will become so much more relevant today than it's. So I'm not concerned about increase in premiums as of today. I mean, unless something really different happens, which you never know about these pandemics, but not worried as of today.
Fair. Very well said. Thank you for that. If I can pick up the next one for Anup. Anup, what kind of new products can we expect given the COVID pandemic? Example, currently business interruptions, loss of profit claims do not cover pandemics, and especially in India. These come only with fire and property insurance. Do you see any innovation that side?
So I mentioned this earlier that I think out of the 4 P's of marketing, we just choose one, which is price. We don't do anything when it comes to product or promotion or even place for that matter. We use very traditional, boring modes of selling insurance. We are trying to change that. So there are a couple of, I can't speak for the industry, but I think there are opportunities, and there are a couple of products, including a loss of job product, which are filed with the regulator. So we expect approval sometime. I can't talk about the other products because for obvious reasons, for competitive reasons. Yeah. But I would expect that the products would get more customer friendly, more demand friendly, and you will have a lot of unusual products which would come out of the market in the next 12 months or so. Do expect a couple of them from our company, maybe in the next 3 or 4 months.
Fantastic. That will touch many lives. So I'm sure a lot of people were looking forward for it. Rajinder, you asked many questions. Time for you to answer a question.
Okay, sure.
Do you expect the digital insurance companies to make a significant impact? Till now, it seems to be only a buzz, but not any material impact.
No, my personal take is yes. Digital sales, digital acquisition, digital fulfillment is here to stay. Okay, anybody who thinks this is running away after the COVID, they are highly mistaken. So I think fundamentally, I also see cost of acquisition coming down. Maybe we will have more money to pay to our distributors, and therefore I see all positive as far as digital is concerned. I think what is needed right now is the significant investment of time, effort, and belief at a CXO level, right? Because what we understand from digital is not about just the device and the landline connections and the data cards around it. Digital is fundamentally a mindset, okay? And it's a science and an art both, as I said. So starting from, if I speak from point of view, the way the sales process need to change, right? The sales process, the andragogy of the sales process need to change, right? The way you ask questions, that need to change. The content need to change. The way you do need analysis digitally, that need to change. The way you share a product brochure, that need to change. So I certainly see if this, and there will be early takers around it. And I have seen, by the way, in my last 3 months time, running a training company, our training attendance, the clients that we serve is all-time high. Pre-digital, we used to have 35% training attendance of the eligible people. Attendance has gone up to 85%. What we are experiencing as a need right now is to across, which is the entry-level sales manager onwards to the BM, to the regional manager, to the CXO. How do you really engage people digitally? And digital engagement is not doing this e-coffee, having a drink sessions over the this thing. So the whole engagement model need to change. I do see HR, the CXO teams coming together and bringing those paradigm shifts around it, right? So that's my take, and even customers will enjoy it because they're finding everything to be so fast around it. And the last take would be, I think we'll have to support this whole digital transformation with a tremendous amount of change management agenda. This will not be easy. This will not be easy for anybody, okay? I mean, to give a small example, you put your button from top to down, you start putting your button from bottom up, you'll have a difficulty. You'll feel irritated in life. Okay, so I think there's an opportunity for the HR heads, for the CXO teams to come together. There's an opportunity for training, HR, the whole management team to come together and say, how do we do it with this great change management agenda? And I think there's one big agenda that we have to have as a team, all of us, is to eliminate fears. Our education system, our induction programs in the corporate world doesn't teach us, doesn't train us how to eliminate fears from your mind. Because fear brings tremendous amount of drop in energy. Okay. And if you can eliminate that fear, the whole digital adoption for success, for productivity improvement will go up from there.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much, Rajinder. If I may ask Jeet, obviously you have two questions, but maybe they are connected. You touched upon working women challenges with work from home and work for home. How have they at ICICI, I mean, how have you and ICICI Prudential sanitized this? What is a good practice that suggests that organizations adopt?
No, I don't have an immediate answer, frankly. Some of it is also something that the person has to negotiate at home. What work from home does, it gives you a lot of flexibility to balance some of the priorities. But how you will negotiate your role within the house is something that the organization cannot really get involved, except give you all the flexibility that is there and maybe enablements that are there to help you manage that. Because the point I'm trying to make here is that between how you manage your other family members, the organization doesn't have a role, and that's the bigger challenge that I see in a work from home context. Because whether you like it or not, and even for us, I'll give you two examples. If the mother is working at home and the children are at home, the children come and bang the door. They may not come and bang the door for the father. Beyond about that, nothing the organization can do about this, right? It is something that something has to be personally negotiated. Or if you have, I'm using it to suggest that if there is an expectation because you are at home that you will lay down the table or get the food organized, maybe that's where the sharing has to happen. I mean, difficult for the organization again to step in there. That's the limited point I'm making.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, it has created added stress. What the organization can do is to give you all the enablements and facilities. But how you negotiate your personal dynamic at home is really your personal challenge. Very difficult for organizations to get involved in that.
And that's where, Jeet, I was saying, that's where I said the whole engagement model, we have to think through outside the conventional ways that we have thought about it. We never thought, but even to get this mindset moving, how do we make the family collaborate together to understand what we are trying to do?
It's a social challenge.
It
is a larger social challenge.
Absolutely.
And I think
beyond the remit of an organization.
Absolutely. That's pretty helpful. And if I can just get into the last question with Sandeep. Sandeep, the question is, in spite of almost 2 decades of privatization, a passion area for insurance remains its reach in rural sector. With focus on digitization in a post-COVID scenario, do you foresee a further distancing of insurance from the interiors?
In fact, it's the other way around, Vijay, I would feel. So first and foremost, in 3 to 5 years' time, not just insurance, but in the broader financial services sector, this so-called distinction between digital, fintech, and the legacy organizations is going to evaporate. There's going to be a massive convergence where you are going to find it very difficult to say, you know what, this is a new age bank or a new age insurance company, and this is a legacy company which has got digital channels. The pace of digital acceleration that is taking place now, there's going to be a convergence. And one of the biggest advantages and benefits that digital will bring about in its holistic sense, again, not just about devices, the nature of products, the nature of the sales process, the way you settle claims, the way you underwrite, the way you deal with service, is it is going to enable companies to reach customers, geographies, segments like never before. So insurance in a sachet, the ability, I mean, you cannot do insurance in a sachet and then have manual claims adjudication. It has to be that if there is a claim, you will simply pay. There is no question of an inspection and an adjudication if you have a small ticket product. So all of this will actually enable and facilitate the ability for companies to get down to rural India, to get down to low income people, micro insurance, all of this. And the only way actually to get there is through digital. And it is not necessary that the path will only be led by fintechs or insurtechs. There could be many legacy companies, and it's again happened the world over, including Africa and many other places, where legacy companies have actually partnered with ecosystem players like telcos, like utility players, and actually delivered insurance in a sachet right down to the bottom of the pyramid. And it could be in the hinterland of India as well. So absolutely, this is something that is only going to accelerate. And 3 to 5 years from now, my belief is you're not going to be able to segment companies into insurtech, fintech, and legacy banks and insurance. There's going to be massive convergence.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sandeep. And so I think we had a fantastic, discussion and very insightful thoughts from all of you all. And I'm sure that like it has happened in our leadership series, we've received a lot of feedback. We're already seeing a lot of feedbacks which are coming in right now over the chat. So thank you for that. I'll just hand this over to Kevin to close this with a note of thanks to all of you all. Stay safe and stay happy. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Vijay. On behalf of the organizing team, it is indeed my privilege to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. My heart fills with lots of gratitude and respect for our distinguished guest speakers for not only sparing their invaluable time for us to grace this occasion, but also for enlightening us with their commendable talk on the subject. You have indeed put best of efforts to make this event unforgettable, and we really owe you a lot. I also want to thank the audience for sparing their valuable time to attend our webinar. We look forward to hosting more of such engaging webinar in our series on exponential leadership, and invite you to write to us with your suggestions and what you would like to hear from us in a forthcoming webinars. Good night, everyone. Stay safe, and thank you once again for joining our webinar.
Thank you. Have a great
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Vijay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Nice
you.
meeting you.
Thank you. Same this side. Thank you.